Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with practical tips to boost your marketing efforts? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, personal LinkedIn profiles are getting 8 times the reach of company and brand profiles, and that gap is only getting wider. About a month ago, we talked to Josh Kahns about the importance of founder-led content, and today we're taking things a step further. My guest is Heike Young, former head of content at Salesforce and Microsoft, here to talk about the framework she built to scale what she calls people-generated content engines, which combines employees, industry creators, and customers. Heike is going to break down what each of these three groups contribute, where they should sit in the funnel, and why she believes humans, not AI, are the most efficient and influential content a B2B brand has right now. Welcome to the show, Heike.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, excited to talk to this audience. My understanding is a bunch of people listening to this podcast don't have specific marketing training or backgrounds per se. And I just want to say I'm right there with you. Never taken a marketing class in my entire life. I majored in English literature and somehow through a series of various professional events found myself in a career in marketing. And now I love it. So maybe that's you too. Maybe you found yourself with the marketing tasks on your plate. And as you're listening to this, I'm hoping we can give you some ideas and brainstorm some new things you could try with your marketing strategy this year that would hopefully not only work well, but also be fun. I think if you're not having fun when you're doing marketing, like you're probably doing something wrong.
Oh my gosh, I love that. What a great place to start. We're going to have fun today. And I love that story. I think a lot of us fall into marketing through various alternative or series of events. I was the same. I did not study marketing initially in college. I have studied communications, and then I got a job doing marketing, which I did not know what that was. So was able to go back and get a marketing minor, but not initially. So we all get here one way or another, and hopefully we're all having fun while we're here.
Yeah, totally.
Now, you spent 15 years as head of content at Salesforce and Microsoft, and then walked away and ended up building this framework that we're going to talk about today. What was the moment that made you realize brands don't land in the same way that people do? And why did you push toward that authentic content marketing built around humans instead?
I think for me, the way I landed at people generated content as the way brands should be creating content moving forward is actually by way of being very irritated with what I call content voice. Content voice to me is this epidemic in all marketing, but especially in B2B marketing. And it's kind of this practice where brands take on this very stodgy, formal tone and use industry jargon when they could just be talking to people normally. So, for example, I'll use some very specific examples. It's saying things like, AI powered digital transformation or, increase your revenue through blah, blah, blah. You can probably fill in the blank with the language in your industry that I would consider content voice. And so I was through all these different roles that I held in B2B tech, I was noticing content voice becoming more and more of a problem. Like every single blog post that I was editing, every social post that I was putting out, it was becoming so clear that it didn't come from a person. And then AI came into the
Mm.
picture. It things even worse because then you had the jargon and the content voice mixed with LLMs and how they were trained on content voice, and now they're churning out more of that same stuff at a bigger scale than ever before. So instead of maybe as a content leader, somebody editing content, reviewing content in your own company, instead of like reviewing a few of these blog posts a month, suddenly people were sending you zip files of hundreds of blog posts, and you're like, hey, we think we're going to use all of these to fix our SEO. Like, what do you think? I'm like, this is content voice, it's AI voice. What is even going on? And so, as I was thinking about all these different ways to solve for this problem, at first I thought, well, maybe it's a brand style guide. Maybe it's saying this is our voice and tone. Maybe it's training people on that. But then it became so clear to me, like time and time again, that the only content that was resonating anymore was from real people. And that
Mm.
really started to become clearer and clearer to me of AI generated content. And so it's kind of the flip of that. It's the reverse. Instead of AI generated content, it's people generated content. And as you mentioned, there's a few different places, and we can go into that of where I would suggest you glean this people generated content from.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways very simple and obvious, and in other ways very profound. The concept of people generated content. Like you almost think you shouldn't even need to say it. Like we should just be generating content as people, especially in a space like LinkedIn where for B2B, right? Like when I think about how I show up on my personal socials on Instagram or something like that, I'm not curating anything. But somehow when we put on our professional hats, even on LinkedIn, whether it's through brand or through our own personal, there is something sort of curated about that is that content voice like you're talking about, and that AI voice. And so the concept of people generated content, it should just be the baseline, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that really is making everybody miserable on all sides of the marketing, because we've been talking about it from the audience perspective a little bit, right? Which is like people reading your product page and not understanding what you do. They read a million blog posts about your brand and they're still not sure what you guys sell. They come to your LinkedIn and they're just like, wow, okay, so these people are posting a lot of content. I still don't totally get what they're saying because they're not talking to me like a real person. It's giving
Mm-hmm.
vibes instead of coffee across the table from me vibes. And so that's a big part of it, is the audience piece, but it's also making marketers miserable inside of their companies because people don't feel empowered to speak the way they normally do. They feel that they have to put on this professional mask every time that they create something on behalf of the brand. And so it's really, everybody is not happy when they are forced to create this type of content. And at the same time, that B2B companies are in their own little vacuum using content voice and AI generated content and all of this stuff that people never really asked for, certainly not at the scale many companies are producing it today. In the broader culture, non B2B culture, media is becoming more personal and more creator led. And so you have
Mm-hmm.
starting their own media companies. You have YouTube overtaking traditional media in terms of, duration viewed and cultural impact. And even politicians are, using social channels to get their message out and show a more authentic side of themselves, for better or for worse. And so everything is becoming more personal and more creator led. And so, yeah, in light of all this, B2B companies have to decide to make a major shift.
For sure. For sure. I think we saw this happen in a really dramatic way when everyone was stuck at home during the pandemic. And all of a sudden, the line between business and personal had maybe disappeared a little bit. And you saw a lot of people with their professional hat on in their personal environments and doing those kind of really authentic in your house with your family running around in the background sort of videos and things like that. And there was a tolerance for that humanness and that imperfection that I'm glad has kind of stuck around a little bit and led to people responding maybe to a little bit more authenticity in our content as opposed to feeling like it needed to be polished in a way that was almost required before that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I social media strategist, I have to spend a good amount of time on social media,
Mm.
even though some days I'd probably just rather delete TikTok off my phone and never look at it again. I do still feel an imperative for research to stay plugged into these channels for professional purposes. And I will tell you, as somebody who consumes a good amount of content, like short form video content in places like TikTok, it's just the most important thing, like the biggest thing I would say to you if you're thinking about, well, how, okay, so more personal, more authentic, what do you actually mean? What I mean is on TikTok right now, today, there are people going viral that just rolled out of bed and had a brilliant thought pop into their head. And they had the audacity to pull out their phone, film it, and say it. And a lot of leaders don't have that familiarity or that social savvy to be able to do that. And it's something that can be learned and trained. It's not some big fancy process where you have to, hire a huge media consultant to do it. It really just is practicing, being willing to put yourself out there, and you can learn to be very good on social media even if you don't think of yourself as like that traditional camera ready person. And so like, I actually think that the polish and high production value gets in the way of the message sometimes. And especially in B2B, it feels like a commercial and it feels like an ad, and nobody wants to be sold to. People want to be taught, they want to learn, they want to be inspired. So, how could you get your message out to market through the real faces and voices of your people? Well, you can do so in a very budget friendly, fast to market way.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you're so right. The polish does kind of get in the way sometimes, and it's just the way the world has shifted and changed. I want to talk about the framework, the people generated content framework. What does that, how does that engine kind of work? How does it fit into a broader B2B content marketing strategy, and how can people kind of get started with it as a process?
Yes. So I call this framework people generated content. And if there's one thing you take away from this entire podcast, it's that this framework is really, really simple. So it's basically tossing the old brand guidelines, everything has to be so perfect and on brand, like tossing all of that out the window, and instead coming up with a strategy to empower people to speak on behalf of your brand. Not necessarily one person, not one human. Founder led content is great, but that's not the only thing that we're talking about here. One person posting is kind of a sad violin. We are talking about creating a symphony of voices and orchestra that all plays together on behalf of your brand and with the goal of growing your company. And the way that we do that is through three big groups. So if you were just making a slide after this, you wanted to go explain to your team, like, hey, I heard about this idea of people generated content. This is how simple that it is. So it's a people generated content engine, and there's three groups of people we want to empower. First of all, employees. Next, customers. And finally, third party influencers, subject matter experts. They could be paid, but they could also be free community members on behalf of your brand. So, your employees, your customers, and your community and third party influencers. What we want to do is create a strategy and include a few different things in this, right? So, we would want to think about, well, who's going to be posting? When are they going to be posting? Are there specific milestones, events, launches that they need to be laddering up to? Are there themes that they need to be talking about, specific pillars, moments? I don't get overly concerned about whether we call it pillars or content themes or whatever we want to talk about, as long as we're not creating a spaghetti cannon, right? Like, we're not just asking a bunch of people to throw a bunch of posts, a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and just seeing what sticks. We really are doing this in a strategic way. And then we want to have a measurement framework of some kind. Like, how are we measuring the success of all of this content? And so there's different ways that we would go about this depending on if it's an employee versus a customer versus a third party influencer or creator of some kind. But really, these are the three groups that we want to mobilize around. And for most of the companies that I work with, I do recommend that they start with the employee piece. Why? Because it's the most free and the most controllable. So it is harder to get customers posting on your behalf at scale. It is harder to get third party influencers and creators. It's certainly more expensive to get them posting. Employees, though, while we don't control them, we can empower them the most easily. And we can also get them up and running the fastest. So there's a variety of tactics that we can use, strategies that we can use to motivate people. And I can talk specifically about that, like different rewards and ways to get people posting on your brand's behalf. But I would start with the employee base as you begin this type of strategy, and then really lean more into the customers and the third party folks as you build it.
Mm. Yeah, I love the those 3 groups because, I think oftentimes we think of our employees and we just stop there. And I wanna talk more about all 3 groups in more specific details, but before we even get in there, just in terms of the framework, what would you say is, like, what's the most essential pieces that you need to in order to empower those people? Like, the schedule of when and how and the topics or pillars or whatever you wanted to talk about, as a brand. But how do I guess, how do you articulate that to those different groups, or is it different?
Yeah, I would say it's probably different for each
Mhm.
of the groups, but some of the things that are going to be part of your strategy are the same. And that would be things like your pillars, your big market moments. We want everybody rallied around what the company wants to be known for. What is the
Mhm.
narrative? Is the big idea or a couple big ideas, perhaps if you have a couple different ICPs that you're going after, that you want everybody to associate with your brand? It's
Mhm.
really as simple as that. It's like when people think of this brand, this is what we want everybody to be thinking about and talking about. And so you could be creating original research, you could be making original series, you could be educating people, teaching them something specific, you could be sharing some groundbreaking hot takes that nobody else in your industry is talking about. But you really want quite a simple idea of what your brand wants to be known for. And that should be pretty consistent, no matter if it's a big influencer talking about your brand, or if it's the founder, or if it's an intern. Everybody should be singing from the same songbook in that regard. But I would generally say, as you build out your strategy, yes, you really want to have content themes. Program for the employees specifically is kind of where we were starting, but then as we bring this out to more groups, you really want to have some content themes, some program objectives, like why are we doing this, what are our
Mhm.
goals, and some ideal ways that we're going to measure our success. And that would be a pretty simple way of starting it, but it would be important groundwork to lay before you get too crazy. Because again, I think what we really want to avoid here, and what I always kind of guard people against when we're building these types of programs together, I do this now like full time. It's a big part of my consulting business, is making these programs for people, is like avoiding that spaghetti cannon. Because I think people, they get so excited about the idea of posting, and they're just like, just start posting, guys, post selfies, post videos, post about our webinar, post about this. And there's two big problems with that. One is that it's simply going to be too much and nobody's going to remember what y'all want to be known for. And second, people are going to burn out, because instead of posting strategically about a few specific things and knowing what they're there to do, they're going to get some initial results, maybe a little bit of initial momentum, and then they're going to be tired. They're going to go back to their regular jobs and be like, oh, you know what? I actually have XYZ billion things to do this week. I'm not going to post on LinkedIn this week because it's not really part of my, like, this is the first
Right.
thing to fall off. And I've seen it time and time again. When everybody gets busy, it's the big crush of the fall or the spring season or whatever it is in your industry. This is the first thing to go. So there has to be a strategy, and there has to be some type of way we motivate people to do this continuously. And this is also why I suggest a curated group of people, instead of just like every single person, everybody copy and paste from our employee advocacy tool and post it. That's great that people are excited. And maybe for specific like takeovers, that's a great idea. Maybe you have a sales kickoff and you want everybody to post that week and just have a big takeover, and everybody posts in their new, shirt or whatever. I like that. That can be kind of fun. Suddenly the reaction is, and I just was working on this with a client, and we were so excited because a bunch of people wrote in and to some of the leaders of the company. They're like, hey, your company was everywhere this week. Like, how did you guys do that? And it was all free. It was all earned media value, right? It was just getting everybody to post at the same time. But there's sort of like, yeah, there's like this other side of it, which is like, are all of those people going to keep doing that all year? Probably not. So I would rather have a curated mix of folks across seniority levels, job types, regions, and then really focus on growing those people as creators, as employee influencers.
I love that. That's great. That's great advice. So let's talk about the employees specifically. We'll start with that first pillar, and I think the word that you used before is really intentional and important of empowering people to post. Because I think you're right. Like, you've got either people who are going to get so excited and post everything and burn out, or people who are like just paralyzed by not knowing where to start or what to say or overthinking. I see that a lot. People go, well, I don't even know what I'm allowed to say or what I could say or what I would want to say. And so you've said, some of the best creators for a brand are working in the business and they just don't have the tools that they need or their permission. So let's talk a little bit about empowering those employees and how do we work with them across the funnel to give them what they need to post confidently.
Yeah, I think this employee creator piece just could not be more important for so many reasons, but a couple quick ones that I'll give you if you're on the fence about this and you're like, well, I'm not sure, and I don't know if we have, the resources to really empower people. Just a couple quick things that I would say to kind of motivate you and maybe put you over the edge. First of all is the AEO piece. So AEO, and I'm not an AEO expert, but I read the work of experts very heavily as I study this area. And AEO, citations for LLMs, they rely really heavily on individual voices and not just like websites. And especially for things like B2B topics, LinkedIn is the number one source for professional queries. And so if you think about that, it just puts so much more ammo behind the rationale to get people posting. There's a huge AEO benefit to your brand. And I also think when talk about creators, they're like, oh, we got to get in the creator economy, partnering with creators. Love that. Third party creators. Also, it's not a free strategy. There's a big financial investment there. And so if you are on a real tight budget, I would highly recommend you use your employee creators, like broaden your aperture, right? Beyond just external creators to who is already in your reporting line right now. You probably already have some people that work for you that are dipping their toes in the water of creating, of posting on LinkedIn, but they may be nervous. They may not even know that they have the permission to be posting. They may not have tools to be posting, and they may not have support to be posting regularly. And so here is exactly how I would start empowering people inside of your company to begin posting for you on LinkedIn. First of all, I would very explicitly give them agency. And this would be from a leader, from somebody high up in the company, letting them know, hey, this is our social media policy. Just so you guys know, you are empowered to talk about success that you're seeing with your customers, what you're seeing in your role, XYZ things. Now, I would lay out very clearly, of course, you're not meant to share specific customer details or whatever those things might be. Update your social media policy as a part of this. That's very important, something I always advise companies do. But really be clear in, hey, this is a big focus for our company. I, as a leader, am going to be doing this myself, and I want you to join me. So giving people that agency, laying out exactly what this program is going to be is just so important. Next, I would really give them some tools, some basic tools to get this done. It could be things like, hey, we have Adobe set up so you guys can edit your own videos in Adobe Express. You can do some minimal photo and image editing, create some carousels in Adobe, whatever it is, giving them some type of resources and tools internally to help them get started. I would also let them know, hey, we're going to be sharing with you in an internal Slack channel or Teams channel some weekly content ideas or some monthly leaderboards of who's posted the best and what you can learn from them. Just some infrastructure around it. And finally, I would give them more of the overall strategy, some content pillars, some market moments, key dates when everybody needs to be posting, a little bit more meat to this other than just, hey, getting everybody to post. And I really think that when people begin to see the results of not only how this is helping grow the brand, but how this is helping grow their personal brands, it's such a win-win for both the company and the employee.
Yeah. Yeah, there is often a lot of appetite for this sort of thing, and like you said, there might already be some people who are sort of dipping their toe in, and there's a benefit to working together because you as the business can help amplify what they're already doing, which is going to help them, and vice versa, right? And getting aligned on the messaging. I love the like weekly content ideas and the monthly leaderboard. I think by nature, a lot of us can be, you know, into a little friendly competition. And so sharing that out, if it really like, it sounds like what you're describing, it's not just a here's our social media policy and here's some stuff you could maybe post and then we never discuss it again. Like if this is a strategy, this is something that needs a little bit of ongoing discussion and ongoing empowerment and more new content ideas, because otherwise it will fizzle out.
Yeah, and it really begs for an internal leader and champion for this type of program.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
seen these types of champions come from a few different places. It could be a content strategy leader, it could be an organic social leader, it could be a comms leader, it could even be a sales leader who really has that vision of how to make this a revenue generating program across the entire organization and understands how it's not just a sales thing, it is a comms thing and it is an organic social thing, etc. That's what makes this area so fascinating to me is because it's so pioneering, it's so cross-functional. It doesn't just affect one group. There's like the C-suite leaders that need to be a part of it. There's people at the lowest. I've seen people who are not at all some of the highest leaders, in terms of like their job title and where they might sit in the organization, but they are having an extremely big influential impact on the company through their content and what they're saying right out and their personal brand that they're building. And so it really is across multiple levels of the org, and I think it needs an ongoing person inside the org to support it. And so when people come to me and they ask me to build these programs for them, one of the first things I always ask is like, well, who's going to be running this for you when I'm not there? My
Yeah.
intention is to up with the resources to do it. But I don't want people to be dependent on me. Like, I want to come in for a few months and help you build it. And then I want you to run with it. I don't want you to be relying on me to create this and run it forevermore. That's just not like, that's not how I'm going to have the best impact for you. And that's not, my dream is to scale this type of program for as many companies as possible. Right. And so I want to be able to take it, give you the tools that you need, and have an internal champion or two kind of run it. And so if somebody doesn't have that, I usually won't I just won't I won't work with them, and I'll let them know, hey, when you have somebody that's dedicated to this, please let me know. I would love to help you. And I actually
Mhm.
think for some jobs like comms, organic social, I've been a organic social media leader myself in different companies. I think that this type of program can take up a lot more of your time than you think. And that's a good thing because when employee content starts to take off, it actually means you can do less of some of the other things that maybe weren't performing as well. Some of the branded, overly branded content, maybe you had a bunch of time dedicated to making, these really pretty carousels and they were all on brand, but like it took forever to create. Maybe you can stop doing some of that stuff, and instead more and more of your company page becomes the videos from these people, the images that they're creating from your events, their stories with customers, a customer they interviewed at one of your big kickoffs recently. That content kind of fuels the organic social strategy more and more. And so at the beginning, maybe it's like 20% of the content. Maybe once it really gets going and the flywheel is happening, it's like 60 or 70% of your company page stuff is coming from people.
Hmm. Yeah, amazing. Now, I want to talk about that content for a second, because as you're thinking about providing content ideas and content pillars and maybe even some assets that the team can leverage, how do you make sure that the content itself is still people generated and not just human beings posting brand content in the content voice? Because I see that a lot on LinkedIn, human beings posting brand generated carousels, and not that it's the worst thing. I think there's ways that I've seen it done that are effective. But yeah, how do you avoid this turning into just people posting content voice, brand voice content?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I always tell people when I'm training them on this type of content, and it's a new approach for sure. Like, I think people have to, nobody was taught this in school. So, this is like a brand new thing, and people kind of have to learn it from the ground up. One of the
Mhm.
things I tell people that one of the best performing content types on LinkedIn is something that includes I language. And that's I saw, I learned, I heard, I recently blah blah blah. Something where you are sharing a tidbit, a story, a learning personally that no LLM could create, that only you could create. Time and time again, I have seen that leads to some of the highest performing content on LinkedIn. And so if you're posting something and anybody, there's a very simple rubric. Does it contain I language? Could anybody have posted this, or are you the only person who could have posted this? That's a very helpful way to see if what you're posting is going to land or not.
Mm, yeah, that's a good one. Just make sure you're talking about yourself and sharing your own experiences.
Yeah, and
Um,
like I was actually coaching somebody recently. I had like a Fortune 500 executive who I was coaching on, his LinkedIn profile, and he sent me some drafts of posts because I part of my programs, like I do edit posts for people. I'm not going to write all your content for you because again, I don't want you to be reliant on me, but I will very personally go in there and edit, posts. I was editing one of a bunch of his posts, but like one in particular, and it was like a big launch moment, and it was just like very clearly copied and pasted, like anybody in the company could have posted it, kind of thing. And my advice to this person was like, what are you proud about from what your team did for this launch? Like, what did they do that impressed you? Because clearly you're excited about it, right? Like, and he was like, oh, well, I was really proud. Like, this team did a new thing. They'd never done this before, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, people would love to hear that from you. And as a leader, if you're sharing, you're proud of what your team did, wow, people like that just lights people up, and they're like, wow, this leader is shouting out their team. That's amazing. Like they love to see it. So don't hide behind the corporate monolithic brand voice. As a leader, as a person, share what you are personally proud of, even in those big company moments.
yeah, yeah. That's a great way to do it, especially if the company page is posting about a launch or an event or a campaign or whatever it might be, to add your own, kind of experience with whatever that thing is, not just that it's happening or just that you're trying to amplify the company's work, but
Yeah.
actually have a perspective on it.
And it's not something to Claude. It's that can just be, totally outsourced to AI. Are there ways to use AI to build this out and make it easier? Absolutely, honey. Please use AI to simplify this for you.
Yeah.
But when you're building this, especially in the early days, as you're learning what lands and you're figuring out how to post, please don't outsource this to AI because it's very obvious.
Yes. Yep. We've talked about that before on the show, and there's a lot of different um, obvious tells.
Like,
Um,
what would you rather spend a few months really working on this and refining it, getting in the weeds and like building up your tolerance for writing and for thinking? And then at the end of the 3 months, you can kind of take a step back and say, okay, these are the post types that are performing for me. Let me work with AI to come up with some prompts and a process to do this moving forward. It can also go based off of your past post performance. You could do an Excel spreadsheet, analytics dump. You can export all of the data directly from LinkedIn and like export that into Claude and be like, hey, what posts performed the best for me over the last few months? Like, let's learn from this data. Would you rather do that, like spend a few months just in the weeds and getting your hands dirty and then you can use AI because you've already started to see some traction? Or would you rather spend a few months getting almost no traction, just getting like barely moving the needle, right? Every post is kind of like 10 or 11 likes because you have never invested the time in really figuring out your voice and your content strategy. Like that's kind of what you're up against if you do all
trade
this with
off.
Claude from day one.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I love the analytics use case for Claude. Doing that with social, I do that with email campaigns where we just ran 3 years worth of subject lines through a Claude skill that we built to try to come up with some guidelines on subject lines, right? But we're not asking, this is after 3 years of writing them as humans and seeing what works, right?
Yes, if all you ever did was have Claude write all of them, like it would just be so blah. It would be the most like vanilla baseline ever, right? And so I think that's what I always encourage people to do too. This is like another guardrail for teams that want to work with me is like a lot of
Yeah.
times people say I actually had somebody recently and they were like, "Oh, we want to hire you to employee generated content." And they were like, "We just wanted to take as little time for our employees as possible." And I was like, I hear you. I get it. You don't want to add another thing to your plate, but for reasons, as discussed in this podcast, I would rather you come back when you have that smaller group of people who are really going to be dedicated to this for the long term.
Yeah, I love that. You do have to invest a little bit of resource into it to do
It's
it
not going to
properly.
be fast. No, it's not going to be fast.
Yeah. Yep. Well, in a sea of things that are fast, let's put our energy where to the things that only we can do, right? And here maybe here's one of them. So, I want to talk about the industry creators group that you mentioned as part of this framework, partnering with people who are already influencers in the space and have an audience. How do you approach influencer marketing from a B2B perspective? And I mean, this is maybe foreign to a lot of folks, like how to even get started with having content be posted on your behalf through these different influencers. How do you do that?
Oh my gosh. Well, this area is near and dear to my heart because not only do I advise people on this, but I also work with a lot of great brands as a creator myself. So I make short form videos, I make posts, for LinkedIn and for TikTok, and I've gotten the opportunity to work with some amazing brands like Adobe and Logitech and many more on sponsored content and influencer marketing. And so I've seen it from both sides. So I'm going to give you some of my best advice for like not only what I think would work from the brand side and what I have seen work from the brand side, but also as a creator, like I want brands to get the most ROI out of this. And there's things that brands could do that would actually make me as a creator give a lot more for free without them
Mm.
spending a dollar, right? Like there's things about the partnership that would make them have to spend less and they would actually get a lot more value from it. And the way I like to think about this is just simply I implore you as a brand, if you're thinking about, B2B, like, oh, we're not sure about dipping our toes into the water with creator marketing stuff, do valuable and not transactional partnerships with people in your industry. Make it valuable for you and for the creator. I would not ask people for their rates for one off posts. I would really invest in long term partnerships with industry creators. And so it's riskier than working with your employees because I'm asking you to kind of give up some control. When you're working with your employees, you're giving them some resources internally, some tools to post, and you kind of know that they're probably going to be on brand. And if not, you could talk to them and you could say, hey, that thing you posted, like, let's take it a different direction. When you're working with a third party creator, yeah, I mean, you're probably going to approve the assets in some way, shape, or form, but you're also spending a lot of money to get to that point. And so it is a little bit riskier, right? It feels a little risky. And we also want to use external influencers without trying to control what they say. Like that's not really a way to get a great partnership. This is a power move if you're able to do it. And smart B2B brands are already doing this with amazing results. And so what I would suggest to you is really figuring out, especially if you're on a budget, really figuring out who are the creators that you would want to partner with long term, giving them a few different ways to make an impact with their audience. And it's not just the one-off post. One of my least favorite things as a creator is when people just ask me, and I understand why people do this, so it's not throwing anybody under the bus, but it's like when people are like, oh yeah, like what's your rate for one video? And it's like, I could give you that rate, but I know you're not going to get the most value out of one video because it could go one of two ways. Like either it pops off and it does great, and then you suddenly think like, oh, all of Heike's content goes viral, which is not true. I have a lot of flops. Or it doesn't go so well, and then you're like, oh well, Heike's content doesn't perform. It's like, well, you gave me one chance. The algorithm's a slot machine. Who knew? Who knows why it didn't perform that day? Maybe there was some other big industry news, and so everybody was looking at that. There's a million different factors that go into it. And so I would, as you're starting out, I would really figure out who are the influencers that you want to build longer term partnerships with, and how would you want to integrate with them. And so integrating with them is bringing them into your existing go to market strategy. You might use them as guest bloggers. You might have them posting about you on their Beehive or making a LinkedIn article about you to influence AEO. It might be making them a host for a week of your podcast or your original series, making them MCs at your event. It all still lives on your brand channels. And so you're getting the final say on what goes out, but you're bringing in deep talent and expertise in the form of a creator. And so, I think like, and I'll give you a quick example. When I worked at Salesforce, we had an amazing team full of wonderful YouTube pioneers, that like people that were so much better at YouTube than I was, but they brought some amazing ideas to the team. And we hired tech YouTuber Brian Tong to host a series on our YouTube channel, on our Salesforce YouTube channel called Salesforce Explained. And this led to our largest organic views on the channel ever at the time. And it was just inherently YouTube first, and it was in his delivery style. So we gave him the episode names, like what it was going to be about. We gave him kind of some loose scripts, but he was able to bring some Brian sparkle and pizzazz to it. And he was able to film it like in his studio. It made it feel more like a YouTube experience than like B2B tech company tries to make a YouTube video. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, is integrating them with your brand in a really intentional way.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the like, this isn't just about hiring someone to post a video about your brand or write some content about your brand on their channels. I love the like guest blogging, or, host your video series or host your podcast for a period of time or something like that. That's just, I guess, unique ways to engage that I hadn't thought about before. And your point about the sort of like one-off projects, I mean, you could kind of apply this this thought process to a lot of different work that marketers do, right, as a one-off versus a longer-term relationship. But what you said, that the algorithm is a slot machine, is so true. There's so many variables, and I get asked questions a lot about benchmarking, and like, how does my content perform versus your other clients' content? And I'm like, there's just never an apples to apples comparison, because we're never like going after the same exact audience at the same
Correct.
exact time with it. It's all, there's always a variable at play. And yes, we can, like, I think it's super important to benchmark against your own performance, and look to see what your higher performing content is versus your lower performing content in all different formats. But this concept of like, kind of comparing to others' content and blah, blah, blah. I just think that the way you just described it, of the algorithm as a slot machine, is just so perfect, because there's just, it can be very unpredictable. And definitely for LinkedIn, some of the posts that I've spent the most time kind of thinking about and crafting and making perfect are just total flops. And the things that I'm like, rolled out of bed, had a thought, posted a thing, people are super into it, and I don't know why, right?
And
So
I social media job, Jen, in I think 2012. And I've been doing social media kind of like in different forms since then, and I still
yeah.
don't know what's gonna perform. I can't tell you with certainty. And like that's like 2012 was like, it was a long time ago, and so I still can't tell you for sure what's gonna pop off and what isn't. And I also think a flop isn't always a flop. I had a post recently that I was kind of disappointed, because the day that I posted it, it just didn't get kind of the typical and like number of likes that I would normally see on the first day. And so I was like, oh, am I losing my edge? Like that's kind of sad. And I hadn't seen a post quite that low in a little while. And I think I booked 5 discovery calls with clients based on that post. And so it wasn't the kind of thing that people liked publicly. But the next day and that night, I started getting all these DMs from people that were like, oh, I really liked that. Like, can we talk about this? And so, a flop isn't always a flop. Like, give it some time before you go crazy. And then I realized I was going to also say how to like get more ROI out of your partnerships. And I kind of closed the loop on it, but like not fully. So if you're hearing this, you want like tips from a creator on how to like get, I'm not going to say cheaper posts, like that kind of makes it seem like the goal is to get the cheapest post possible, and I don't necessarily think that should be, the goal per se. We want to get the most value out of the relationship with the creator. But I would say like one of the easy low-hanging fruit that costs $0, and I'm shocked that more brands don't do this, is just engaging with my posts. Just engage with my posts. Just have the company engage with my posts. Have the employees engage with my posts, not just the branded ones that I do for you, but like my regular posts. If I see the brand in there and they're like making little funny, quirky comments to me, the employees are all engaging with me and hyping me up, I will go to the ends of the earth for you because suddenly I feel like we're friends. And it's not just this transaction to you where you're paying me for XYZ deliverables. And I get that it is a business. I totally get that. But like, I also want to genuinely have relationships with these brands. And like, I want you to send me a quick message and get my thoughts on something and me to provide it for free. Like, I want us to be able to kiki like that. So just engage with the post for $0. Like that's a huge one. And then buy package deals. And I was hinting at this earlier, but like when I'm working with a brand and they buy a huge package of stuff for me, a LinkedIn article, a newsletter mention, a bunch of videos, a blah, 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 they're getting such a lower price per thing because they bought in bulk. Whereas if somebody, oh, all we want to do is buy this one video, then I'm kind of thinking, well, I've got to learn how to talk about their brand for the first time. I've got to read all these briefs about them. I've got to, do all this like groundwork. Setting it up is going to take a lot of time. And so I know I'm going to have to charge a little bit more for all of that. And it's just going to be one post. And I have had, actually last year I had a brand, and against my better judgment, I let them buy one post from me, and I did, I should have tried to insist on like a multi-post thing, but they were like, oh, we're just going to buy one video. So it's like, okay. So I did it. And then I think they reached out like a month later and they're like, well, our test with you wasn't successful because not that many people clicked the link or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And not that many people did click it. But is that the ultimate goal here? And I think we weren't totally aligned on that aspect of it. And so that's why I always like to insist on kind of a longer term partnership, because I think it's so very important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, this came up. I mentioned the episode with Josh Kahns where we talked about founder content, and the same concept came up of how we're generous on social media. And that's how we can really add value, is by being generous with our thoughts and opinions and expertise. But the engagement piece is about generosity as well. Like you said, right? Like I know that anytime someone in my network is posting, it's because they're trying to get engagement. They want people to see it. And when I comment something thoughtful on someone's post, it's not to benefit me. I mean, maybe people see my content, but it's to kind of send that free message, like you said, to that person that I'm supporting your efforts. You put some effort into creating this post. And so I'm going to support it by helping the algorithm, right? And so I think like coming at it from a place of generosity, then that long-term partnership, it's this mutual kind of benefit, right?
Yeah. If you're looking at it as transactional as the brand, and you're coming to me like, we're going to give you this number of dollars and you're giving me exactly this, then that kind of gives me the indication of view the relationship, where I absolutely have brands right now that like I've worked with enough where they could ask me to go to an event for them, and I would actually probably buy my own plane ticket to go because I care that much. And we are like totally in it together. And I know that if I were to go to their event and they were to bring me on, they would give me great opportunities and put me in front of the right people. And like it would be a win win for both of us. And so I would do stuff like that for them for free at this point, because we've gotten to that place. And so you only get to that place through relationships. And again, it's kind of one of those things where it's like it feels weird to have to say it out loud, similar to like the people generated content. But it's like relationships are kind of how the world works. Like, you know, somebody, you do something for them for free. I'm a mom of two young kids. This is like you learn this as a young child. Like, I see this with like my oldest, like you give a friend a little unicorn toy that's kind of special to you, and then the next time they see you, they bring, and now you guys are buddies because you're sharing other. And that's kind of what this is. Like, I'm going to bring you a crystal, you bring me a unicorn, and we're going to make it something magical.
Yes, yes. This is like a universal, like how
Yes.
we connect with people, right? This is like crows bringing like, trinkets to people who leave them food in their yards.
Yes.
This is a whole thing.
That's like, it's like a whole ecosystem of, generosity and
Mm.
vibes. And so you are a brand and you're thinking about getting into this, like, wouldn't you rather partner with the creators that you could see yourself having this type of relationship with long term? You're like, whoa, I would love to bring them in to our webinars and to meet our customers and to do this or that, and not just to use them as distribution for your content. Like, the distribution piece, it just feels kind of played out at this point.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay. Great tips on influencer marketing. I'm taking away a lot from that. I want to talk about how to activate your customers because this could be maybe a tricky group. And, a lot of like case study content feels content voice, kind of like you're talking about, everything's formatted like the problem, the solution, the results, which are never actually results, right? Um, so it's predictable. And I guess, like, what does it take to get a customer to create something real and authentic? And how do you, as a brand, then turn that into usable content without like flattening it back into the same old case study?
Yeah. Well, I think with talking about customer storytelling, it almost feels like yawn, customer stories. We've been doing this forever. But I think the traditional way we have been doing customer storytelling in B2B has been a big yawn. And it has been the formulaic before and after stories and just kind of plug and play the latest customer details. And it's like the brand, again, speaking on behalf of these other people and saying this is what we did instead of letting people speak on behalf of themselves. And so yes, this does require a major shift in how you're talking to customers and how you're asking for their participation in your customer stories program. And so really what we want to do with this type of shift is we want to focus again on strategic voices instead of trying to do a spaghetti cannon of as many customers as humanly possible. And so what I often like to suggest is like a tiered model. So I would rather have several big tier customers. We use them at our events. They get up on stage and talk to our execs at panels. We make videos with them. We invite them on our podcast. We tell their stories from a bunch of different angles. It's a prismatic story. We talk to different people inside of the org instead of just one. I think that marketers get sick of their content before the audience does. We're getting tired of it. We're like, oh, yeah, we already told that story. People in the audience haven't even all heard about it yet. So we need to just really tackle this from a bunch of different angles. So I would do a tiered approach. And I would also bring in a paid side to this. So I would invite customers to be talking, on their channels. I would make that a part of how this all comes together. So when you're talking to somebody, you're like, instead of just saying, hey, can we post about you on our blog? It's like, hey, the way we're structuring our customer storytelling program now, we actually really want to hear from you in your own voice. You can talk about the challenges that you faced. You can talk about your entire experience. We would love to empower you to share your voice. And you can boost the post. This is especially a great hack on LinkedIn. You could boost the post as thought leader ads, which are the most effective. And a lot of people would actually like to have their post boosted because it means that they would get some new followers and like new eyeballs on their content. And it positions them as a leader in their space. You can use customers at your events to talk to each other and on stage panels without your execs butting in. Like, that's a great way to do this without content voice. You can use customers to host limited series for you. They could host virtual events and real events for you. They can even write for your newsletter and sign it from them. And they're like a guest writer for the week. Customer storytelling is all that it's cracked up to be. It is all that we said it was and more, but only when customers can talk in their own words and not read from a script.
Yeah, and that's a little tricky sometimes because I find that customers are very willing to participate in these sort of programs if you make it really easy for them to participate in these sort of programs. And sometimes the default is, I'll write it for you. I'm going to write this for you, and all you have to do is
Just to get
approve
it
it.
approved. Yeah.
Right. And that is, yes, making it really easy for them. But to your point about the employee content, some of it is going to take a little bit of time. And to your point about the influencer relationships, if this is a long-standing client that you have a really deep relationship with, then there is a willingness to support and to participate in things like this. Which I think we maybe don't give our customers enough credit for sometimes and want to make it too easy, which then dilutes the content.
Agreed. And I wish I could say there's a magical way to, wave a wand and get customers to do this for you. It's going to depend greatly on exactly what you're asking them to do, your industry, the types of customers that you have. I know, for example, I've worked with folks in various regulated industries, and it can be hard to get them to talk legally about what they've done and how they've used your product. So we've got to get creative. A few things that I have seen work, just as illustrative examples to maybe get some of the creative juices flowing. Any type of like VIP experience or access. So if we're having an event and I realize this is kind of geared a little bit more towards slightly larger companies. I know you can be creative and think of how this applies to smaller companies if you're listening to this as well. But something like if you're having a big event and there's a concert coming up that's going to be part of the event, can all of the customers that are part of the big customer storytelling program, those special ones, can they get like VIP access where they get to sit at the very front of the concert, or they get to meet the band, or like just little things like that where you're telling them you're going to get this VIP experience and moment? Could it be access to your internal executives? Maybe the customer is sick of XYZ problem in your product. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get you a monthly meeting with our engineering team. And in exchange, we would love for you to help tell this story on social media. This is like something that we're going to do, as we build this for you. We would love for you to share with your audience about how this has helped you. So you get that access. So experiences, access to things, for the company. And then I also find that, like, yes, giving, so when you're talking about creating content, sometimes I think it's like easier to just put the words in somebody's mouth, right? So you're like, well, here it is. I already made it for you, and all you have to do is go and approve it. I think structuring it, if the person writing the content, maybe they're like a junior writer and they don't have a lot of experience working with people in this job title or whatever, if they can simply say, hey, I'm just going to need like 15 minutes of your time to do, you can either let me interview you about this, and we can get the I language in there, because that's what we want, is the I language, right? Going back to the employee piece and what content resonates. Can we get them to say I language instead of just like the very basic generic stuff? So either an interview or a whisper flow voice note type of a situation. So I've been having a lot of luck with executives having them just send whisper flows and voice notes over, where it's like, oh yeah, just take 5 minutes as you're in the car to riff on this topic, like tell me what you're thinking, and then I will take that. This is a great use case for AI as well.
Yeah, I mean that's how I do all of my own content. Is I just leave myself voice notes. To be honest, I
Drive to the gym, I used to listen to music when I would like drive in the morning to the gym. And now it's just like this conversation with Claude. And I'm like, oh yeah, go back and add this to that idea that I had. And oh yeah, remember I wanted to do a post about this or that. Oh, go and tag this in. I'm constantly talking to it in the car and then conversationally creating these different pieces, and like this is whole brain dump of like content ideas. I think the huge use case where something, Claude, Whisper Flow, whatever tool you want to use, it can be massively, massively
yeah,
supportive of your individual voice coming through in your content.
for sure, for sure. Um, in another life, a few years ago, I put together a customer advisory board, and it was such a great way to partner with those key strategic voices. And there were so many benefits, not just for us as a brand, but also for the customers that were, we were putting them in a room together, a group of people that wouldn't necessarily get in a room together other outside of
Mm.
us, and letting them talk about industry challenges and letting them talk about different ways of solving them and brainstorm how they were using the product and the platform. We gave them a platform to participate in betas and product feedback and things like that. So they had early access to things. And then we got to tell their stories. We just put them in a room to talk virtually a couple times a year and in person a couple of times a year. And it really elevated everything that we were able to do. And I had that feeling that you described of like the marketers are getting sick of this content, but the audience wasn't. And it's because of what we were talking about with the algorithm. Not everybody was seeing everything we were putting out. So even if we were talking to the same people or telling some of the same stories from different angles, it was new to everyone that was listening and
Mhm.
watching and engaging, because the cross section of people who saw the post you did a week ago and the post you're going to do in a month is very small. So it's okay to kind of repeat some of this content and remix it and reuse it and really squeeze the juice out of it, because it's not.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's we will get people up not only for our employee generated content, but for across job types, across roles, across regions. The customer in Germany is going to have a different lens of the story than the customer, the same brand, but like somebody who worked in the Australia team or somebody who worked in this part of the department has a different experience than the person who was a higher level leader in this part of the department. And so that's why we're empowering use language and explain their experience and describe their personal interactions with this product or service or whatever it was, because that's what keeps it from being monolithic and like, we love using this and it helped us generate more ROI. It's the difference between that and, oh, I love using this tool. It saves me so many hours a week because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, what is the kind of brand's role in all of this, and sort of pulling this all together as a strategy? And certainly there's the upfront guidance of what we already talked about, of the different topics and content ideas, and kind of assembling these Avengers of strategic voices for your brand. But then, yeah, what's the brand's role in all of this on an ongoing basis?
I think that the brand really continues to set the strategy, the objectives for this, and whether they change over time. So there should always be a resounding battle cry from the leaders of like, hey, now our company's priorities are X, Y, and Z. Like all of this needs to shift accordingly. It's not just a set it and forget it for the next 2 years type of a thing. So like the objectives and the strategy and like the why behind this constantly need to be reiterated by the brand team to all of these people. It's the rally. It's like the why the heck are we spending all of this time creating all of this content? Also reiterating the like who are we doing this for? What are the key moments? This always changes. There's always new events, there's always new product launches. It's just like rallying people against all of these moments and then measuring the success. So trying to figure out like, hey, did we actually do what we said we were going to set out to do?
Amazing. Um, I've taken up way too much of your time. This has been amazing. I could keep
Had like
talking.
all of my favorite conversation topics that I could like nerd out about forever. So
I know we'll have to do this for 2 hours next time. I certainly could. But thank you so much for walking us through how to build a people generated content engine. I really appreciate
I
it.
have to put I have like an infographic for this that makes it very easy to put into a slide or something like that, and we'll have to link to it whenever we share this out. Because I know sometimes when I'm learning new frameworks, it very much helps me to have like a visual for it. So we will share that with you for everybody listening, so you have like a way to like picture it in your mind. I know we bounced off a lot of different ideas here, but yeah, love to kind of chat about these topics and appreciate you bringing me on.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Please, everyone listening, make sure that you're following Heike on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Marketing Demystified wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for more conversations that help demystify the complex world of marketing.